Before we get started today, I wanted to show you guys these bookmarks. They're in the files. If you look in the Facebook group, in the B90 April to June Facebook group, you'll see. If you look in the files, you'll see this bookmark, this easy reading schedule bookmark. And if you print that out, I printed some on cardstock. I don't know if I have one. I don't think I have one handy, but when you print one out, you'll get 3. And then you just have to cut that out, and I don't think you guys can see on there, but it's got the schedule, it's got the reading days, and it's got little boxes over here that you can check off when you get through there. It's pretty cool to have, especially if you guys don't have the B90 Bible. See, the B90 Bible has the days marked off in the Bible itself. So at the top of the Bible, right there, it says day 3, and then begin day 4. So today we begin in chapter 41, and we read through Exodus 2. So we're also starting another book in the Bible. We're starting Exodus today. So we got a lot of reading to do, but I just wanted to show you guys those couple of things before we get started today. I hope everybody's enjoying it. I hope it's fun. I'm not doing these videos for it's really something I just wanted to do. I wanted to read the Bible out loud on and not really on video, but at least for somebody. And when I start reading the Bible, everybody goes to sleep most of the time. So, and not really, but that's just kind of the way it is. It takes a special kind of person to be able to just read the Bible for an hour and 15 minutes. And I want to know if you're doing that with me, you're a special person in a good way, not in a bad way. I love you, and I thank y'all for your support. I thank you for accepting this challenge and doing this with me. It's really a lot of fun. I mean, I'm learning a lot about. I'm even gleaning from the text. And you never read the Bible. You never read the Bible and don't get something from it. Every time you read the Bible, something awesome comes to your mind, and sometimes it's stuff that you don't agree with, and it takes time to sort through this stuff. And like we're saying with the whole Bible in 90 days thing, what we need to do is look at everything. You get a story of the whole big picture, because the stuff that we're reading today is going to make more and more and more sense as we go along, and it's just really awesome. Another thing I wanted to point out is my bookshelf. I'm super proud of. I moved my camera so I can show off my bookshelf today. I'm happy about it. I got my pile of books was right here on this table, and now it's up on the shelf. I still have to build another bookshelf. I have a lot of books. All right, let's get started in Genesis chapter 41. Now remember yesterday we read and Joseph started interpreting dreams. He interpreted the dreams of the baker, and the baker got killed, and the cupbearer got promoted. So and he got his job back too. And then so now that was like a test, and now he's really going to start reading dreams. So here we go, chapter 41. Then 2 full years had passed. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. And then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning, his mind was troubled. So he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was angry once with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And the things turned out exactly as he interpreted them for us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing by the bank of the Nile, when out of the river came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell what they had done. No one could tell that they had done so. So they looked just as ugly as before. And then I woke up. In my dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin, and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up 7 good heads. And I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain, scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine." Verse 28. "It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming through the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon." Verse 33. "And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man to put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine." The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, in one whom is the Spirit of God? In whom is the Spirit of God?" And then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. With only respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Verse 41. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and the people shouted for him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift a hand or foot in all Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zephanath Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the Pharaoh's presence, and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all that my father's household." The second son to be named Ephraim, and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Verse 53. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end. The 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was a famine in all other lands, but the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. But then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. Chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others, because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain. For there was a famine in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. And he remembered his dreams. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies! You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies." "No," he said to them, "you have come to see where our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest now is with our father, and one is no more." Joseph said to them, "It is as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to go get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then assuredly as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die." This they proceeded to do. Verse 21, they said to one another, "Surely we're going to be punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life. But we wouldn't listen, and that's why this distress has come upon us." Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an account for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them, since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep. But then came back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. At the place where they had stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, and he saw that he saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "It's here in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other trembling and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, "The man who is lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men, and we're not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan.'" Verse 33. "The man who is lord over the land said to us, 'This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for your starving households, and go. But bring back your youngest brother to me, so I would know that you are not spies, but honest men. And then I will give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, 'You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you, and trust him to my care, and I will bring him back." But Jacob said, "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you're taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow." Chapter 43. Now, the famine was still severe in the land, and they had all eaten all the grain they had brought back from Egypt. And their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.' If you send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, then we will not go down, because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" Israel asked, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man that you had another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. 'Is your father still living?' he asked us. 'Do you have another brother?' We simply answered his questions. How were we to know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down here'?" Verse 8. And then Judah said to Israel his father, "Send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I don't bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice." Verse 11. Then their father Israel said to them, If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm, a little honey, some spices and myrrh, and some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother and also and go back to the man at once. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Verse 15. So the men took the gifts and double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also, and they hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." Verse 17. The man did as Joseph told him, and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, "We were brought back here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys." Verse 19. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. "We beg your pardon, our lord," they said. "We came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found his silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We also have brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks." Verse 23. "It's all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver," and then he brought Simeon out to them. Verse 24. The steward took the men into Joseph's house and gave them water to wash their feet and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard that they were to eat there. Verse 26. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts that had been brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. And he asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, Your servant, our father, is still alive and well." And they bowed, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and he saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" He said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. Verse 31. After that he washed his face and he came out, controlling himself. "Serve the food." And he said, "Serve the food." They served him and by himself, and the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's, so they feasted and drank freely with him. Chapter 44. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain." And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup that my master drinks for, and who also uses for divination? It is a wicked thing you've done.'" When he caught up with them, he repeated those words to him, but they said to him, "Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver that we found inside the mouths of our sacks. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." Verse 10. "Very well then," he said. "Let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame." Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it, and then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. It is at this they tore their clothes, and they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves on the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?" Verse 16. "What can we say, my lord?" Judah replied, "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. Now, we are now my lord's slaves. We ourselves and and the one who was found to have the cup. Verse 17, but Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who is found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your fathers in peace. Then Judah went up to him and said, pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Don't be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants, do you have their father or do you have a father or a brother? And he answered, we have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of my mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Verse 21, and then you said to your servants, bring him down to me so that I can see him myself. And we said to my lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to our father, your servant, my father, we told him that what my lord had said. Then our father said, go back and buy a little more food. But we said, we cannot go down if your youngest brother is... only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Verse 27, your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, he said. He has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. Verse 30, now if the boy is not with us when I go back to your father, to your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of your father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Verse 33, now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, don't let me see the misery that would come on my father. Chapter 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers, and he wept loudly he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. And when they had done so, he said, I am your brother, Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save the lives that God sent me, ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. Verse 8. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord over all Egypt. Come down to me and don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children, and your grandchildren, your flocks and your herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household will all go, and all who belong to you will become destitute. Verse 12. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father all that the honor according to me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. Verse 14. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin embraced him weeping, and he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. Verse 16. And when the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan. And bring your father and your families back to me, and I will give you the best land in all of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." Verse 19. You are also directed to tell them, "Do this. Take some carts from Egypt for your children and your wives, and get your father and come. Now, never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours." So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. And then he sent his brothers away. And as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way." Verse 25. So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he's the ruler over all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph said to them, and when he saw their carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, and Israel said, "I am convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Chapter 46. So Israel set out with all that was his, and when he returned to Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in a vision that night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he replied. "I am God, the God of your father." He said, "Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Chapter 5, or verse 5, sorry. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons took their father Jacob and their children and their wives and the carts that the Pharaoh had sent to transport them. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them all their livestock and the possessions they acquired in Canaan. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters and all his offspring. Verse 8. These are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his descendants, who went to Egypt. Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob. The sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Juel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kolath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan had died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez, Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Pua, Jeshub, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, Jahleel. These are the sons of Leah. These are the sons that Leah bore to Jacob in Padan Aram. Besides his daughter Dinah, these sons and daughters of his were 33 in all. The sons of Gad, Zephon, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Bariah. And the sister was Sirah. And the sons of Berai, Heber and Malkiel. Verse 18. These were the children born to Jacob by Zilpah from Laban, and had given to his daughter Leah, 16 in all. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin in Egypt. Manasseh and Ephraim were born to Joseph by Ashnath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mopim, Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 in all. The son of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jahzeel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These were the sons born to Jacob by Bilhah from Laban, who had given to his daughter, whom Laban had given to his daughter Rachel, 7 in all. All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, those who were his direct descendants, not counting his sons' wives, numbered 66 persons, with the two sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt. The numbers of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. Verse 28. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen. When they had arrived in the region of Goshen, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, Now I'm ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive. And then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and speak to Pharaoh, and will say to him, My brothers and my father's household who are living in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, they tend livestock, and they have brought along their flocks and herds and everything they own. When Pharaoh calls you and asks, What is your occupation? You should answer, Your servants have tended livestock from boyhood on, just as our fathers did. And then you'll be allowed to settle in the region of Goshen, for all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. Chapter 47. Joseph went and did what Pharaoh told him. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers, with their flocks and herds and everything they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked the brothers, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied to Pharaoh, "just as our fathers were." They also said to him, "We have come here to live for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan, and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now, please let your servants settle in Goshen." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if you know of any among them with a special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock." Verse 7. And then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before the Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." And then Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and Pharaoh went out from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food according to the number of their children. Verse 13. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that it was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain, but they were buying, and he brought it to the Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? All our money is gone." Then, verse 16, "Then bring your livestock," said Joseph. "I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock, since your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep, their goats, their cattle and donkeys. And he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all their livestock. Verse 18. And when that year was over, they came to him with the following year and said, "We cannot hide from our Lord the fact that since our money is gone and our livestock belongs to you, there is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land. Why should we perish before your eyes? We and our land as well. Buy us and our land in exchange for your food, and we with our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate." So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. The Egyptians, one and all, sold their fields, because the famine was too severe for them, and the land became Pharaoh's. And Joseph reduced the people to servitude from one end of Egypt to the other. However, he did not buy the land of the priests, because they received a regular allotment from Pharaoh and had food enough from the allotment Pharaoh gave to them. That is why they did not sell their land. Verse 23. Joseph said to the people, "Now that I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is the seed for you so you can plant in the ground. But when the crop comes in, give a fifth of it to Pharaoh. The other four-fifths you may keep as seed for the fields and as food for yourselves and your households and your children." Verse 25. You have saved our lives, they said. May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as law concerning the land of Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. It was only the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They had acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. But when the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise me that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried." "I will do as you say," he said. "Swear to me," he said. Then Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff.